Welcome, it is Mitch. I am on YouTube. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel as we try to build this thing up. Packers lose to the Lions 34-31, a walk-off field goal for Detroit. I had said it in the preview video a couple days ago, and hopefully the Packers aren't thinking this way, but I think the fan base probably is. If you couldn't beat this version of Detroit that was riddled with injuries on the defensive line and at the linebacker spot, and look, I know the Packers had injuries too. You know, there was no Edge Cooper, there was no Ja, no Romeo Dobbs, injuries in the game, especially early on. Evan Williams was out at safety. Javon Bullard later on. Those are both rookie safeties. If you can't beat this version of Detroit, though, how the hell are you going to be expected to, if you meet them for a third time in the playoffs, and you now know that's going to be in Detroit? NFC North dreams, gone. You know, home field and a first-round bye, gone. Green Bay, if they get to the playoffs, and they should, they'll be a wild card team. But if you couldn't beat this version of Detroit at Detroit, how the hell are you going to expect anyone to believe you're going to do it on the third try against a team that should be healthier by then? And if they're not healthier by then, you've got players on that defense like Jamal Adams and Quan Alexander who are just getting accustomed to life in Detroit and life as a Lion. They're going to be more familiar with the scheme, more familiar with Glenn's defense down the road come postseason time. It's just that's a disappointing one. I know Detroit's a wagon. I know they're really good. They're 12-1 this season. It was on the road. My point stands. If you couldn't beat this version of the Lions that had so many injuries going into it, I would be very, very pleasantly surprised if Green Bay can somehow do it in the playoffs. Now, anything can happen in the postseason. Obviously, we all know that, but this was an opportunity for the Packers. And my one big key that I told you guys, I thought they needed to start fast and put pressure on Goff. They didn't do either. I think Goff was sacked once. They had 2 quarterback hits. I mean, that's not going to do it. And Detroit's passing offense just ate Green Bay alive in the middle of the field. I mean, it was middle of the field off play action over and over and over again, especially in the second half. It was pitiful. There's just things you can't do against really, really good teams and expect to win. Like that first drive was surgical for the Lions. They went right down the field. They slapped Green Bay across the face, scored a touchdown, went up 7-0. And it was like Jeff Hafley all of a sudden was like, oh, we're going to have to pressure Jared Goff tonight. Like it's not going to work just rushing 4. But it already took you a drive to realize that. Like you didn't know that going into it. That first drive was practice for Detroit going down the field and scoring. And I said Green Bay needed to start fast, put pressure on Jared Goff. They didn't do either of those things. They just didn't. And Green Bay got behind the 8 ball early and took the lead in the second half, 21-17, and you felt good after a touchdown drive early in the second half. Took just a couple of minutes, a bomb to Christian Watson, and then Green Bay was able to get it in a few plays later, and then Keyshawn Nixon comes up with an interception. Green Bay scores shortly after that, so they're up 21-17, but I'm not trying to be overly pessimistic here, and maybe I'm in the minority here. I hope I am. Every fourth down, Detroit went for it. I had no faith Green Bay was going to stop them. And they stopped them once, 4th and 1, at Detroit's own 31, and it gave Green Bay, a big boost of momentum. But Detroit had 4 fourth-down touchdowns against the Packers in 2 games this year. 2 at Lambeau, 2 on Thursday night. Think about that. 4, not fourth-down conversions. Detroit had 4 fourth-down touchdowns against the Packers in 2 games this season. I mean, that's unheard of. It's embarrassing. The one at the end of the half, too, it's like you wish you had that third time out on that stupid challenge Green Bay threw in the first half where Gibbs clearly had the first down. Green Bay challenges it anyways. They lose a timeout. Then at the end of the half, when you could have taken a TO with a little less than a minute left and it would have been 4th and goal at the 2 or whatever the hell it was, instead Detroit wastes the clock all the way down and they pitch and catch. Was that to Gibbs right at the end of the half, and it's 17-7 going into the break. Like, one thing I loved, because I'm not going to just rain on the parade throughout this whole video, I thought I didn't think this was like Detroit bullying Green Bay in this one. It was just Detroit made less mistakes. They shot themselves in the foot less. Like, the penalties that Green Bay had, again, just the timing of them. You throw a touchdown pass to Josh Jacobs, you're going up late in the game. Nope, offensive pass interference on Christian Watson. You move back a mile, and then it's 2nd and goal at like the 17-yard line. Incomplete pass, 3rd and goal at the 17-yard line. You end up kicking a field goal 31-31 with like 4 minutes left, a little more than 4 minutes, a little bit of change on the clock, and you just had a feeling this was going to happen because Green Bay's defense, outside of the defensive line in the run game, and I can't say the defensive line as a whole because they didn't do shit for getting pressure on Goff, or at least hitting home. 1 sack, 2 quarterback hits. Outside of the defensive line, really slowing down the run game. Gibbs had 15 carries for 43 yards. David Montgomery had 14 for 51. I thought the defensive line was getting the push at the line of scrimmage. They had that 4th and 1 stop. I thought Kenny Clark popped. I'm going to have to go back and rewatch, obviously, but I thought Kenny Clark popped. Quay Walker, maybe not as popping off the page as stellar as he's been the last 2 games, but I thought it was another good performance from Quay Walker. Again, this is an instant reaction, so I'm going to have to go back and watch. But outside of the defensive line up front, really holding its own against arguably the best offensive line in football when it came to the run game, I thought the defense was putrid. You got 1 turnover, the Keyshawn Nixon interception, but you gave 1 back on a fumble by Christian Watson early in the first half. Just too many mistakes. That touchdown pass to Josh Jacobs, you're going up, and it's offensive PI on Watson, and all of a sudden it's second goal at the 17. Your odds just go down to score a touchdown there. And Green Bay ends up settling for 3, and the writing's on the wall. It's the defense that's already given up 31 points and can't stop the middle of the field to save its lives. Now they're going to have to go try to get a stop. In the first play of the drive, 19 yards to Jamison Williams, and then it's a holding call later down the road with a little more than 2 minutes left. And Detroit has it now, what is it, 2nd and 20 or something like that? 1st and 20, and they get 3 yards. And then it's 2nd and 17, and Goff just flings a seed right to Amon-Ra St. Brown right short of the sticks. It was just pitiful. I thought it was a putrid performance by the defense outside of the run game with the defensive line. So just tough. And one thing that, because I'm frustrated. I'm very frustrated after that one. I'm going to have to stay off Twitter, going to have to stay off, watching some of these. I don't watch the national shows too much, but you see clips. Everyone's going to have the knee pads on for Dan Campbell. I just find it interesting that, he goes for it on 4th down recklessly all the time, and it bit him in the ass in the NFC Championship against San Francisco last season. And on this night, it worked every time except the 4th and 1 from their own 31 where they got stopped, and all of a sudden everyone's like, oh my gosh, that's so crazy. Why wouldn't they just punt it? Why'd they go for it there? But then it works every other time. Remember Brandon Staley, the Chargers coach? Brandon Staley, when he was the coach of the Chargers a couple seasons ago, he went for it just as recklessly as Dan Campbell did, but LA never converted them. The Chargers, it seemed like, always got stopped on these 4th downs. 4th and 1, 4th and 2 at your own 35 or whatever it was, or where you're up 3 late and you're in your own side of the field, but you're going to go for it anyways on 4th and short, and it seemed like the Chargers never got it, and Staley got crucified for it. Part of the reason he definitely lost his job, now, of course, Harbaugh's in L.A., it just seems like the Lions always get him. It really does. 10-7, late second quarter, less than 20 seconds left, whatever it was. I hate saying it. I had no faith Green Bay was stopping them. I had no faith they were stopping them on that 4th and goal going into the half. They didn't. And instead of 10-7 or 13-7, it's 17-7. And it didn't feel like a back-breaking moment, but it sure is deflating because I thought Green Bay, under normal circumstances, would have played a perfect bend-don't-break style against Detroit. I should say not against Detroit. Against 31 other teams, Green Bay would have played a perfect bend-don't-break style of defense because most teams aren't going for it on all these 4th downs like the Lions do. The one team you have to do it another down against is Detroit, and Green Bay couldn't stop them on 4th downs. What were they, 4 or 5? I'll try to find it, but very frustrating. 4 or 5. Detroit 4 or 5 on 4th down. I mean, that's insane. Absolutely insane. Green Bay, 7 penalties, 59 yards. I think a couple of them came at just inopportune times. The Quay Walker personal foul after the play. I didn't even blame Quay. That lineman sold it. Dan Skipper for the Lions sold it. He flopped. He's 600 pounds, and he just fell down like a sack of potatoes when Quay Walker just bumped him after a play. So Detroit likes to do that balance of we'll flop and sell for a penalty, but then we'll also, do your first down celebrations and talk a bunch of shit and bark at you on the sidelines. So they do a good job of kind of balancing that out. Yeah, just tough. I mentioned with the defense, too, because I've been harping on them, and you give up 34 points. I know Detroit's offense is incredible, and Ben Johnson, I hope he gets as far away from the NFC North as possible, and that's a compliment to him. He's an incredible offensive coordinator. It seems like when you got him figured out, you don't, and they call these quick passes, and they get it out of Goff's hands quickly a lot of the times, and then when they don't, they were just absolutely demolishing Green Bay in the middle of the field. If any of you go back and watch the game, or if you go back and watch clips, watch how many times the middle of the field is wide open. And it's Laporta, it's Jamison Williams, it's Tim Patrick, it's Amon-Ra St. Brown. Over and over again, that's where Detroit was finding success because really their ground game, for the most part, was contained by the Packers. So I thought, when you're playing really good teams, You can't have what Green Bay had on the opening drive defensively, where it took the first drive and then Hafley's like, oh, we're going to have to pressure them. Like, yeah, no shit. Why aren't you doing it on the first drive? Now you're behind the 8-ball 7-0, and that fast start that everyone wanted is wiped off the board. On the flip side of that, for Green Bay's offense, what would that have looked like in the first half if Detroit's defensive line was healthy? Because they're down to the nitty-gritty on the depth chart, and the pass protection was atrocious in the first half for Green Bay. And not only that, I'm not a play caller. I'm not an offensive coordinator or head coach for a reason. I'd be terrible at it. But Green Bay came into this game, and I feel like I said this a million times in the preview video too. The running game has been so damn successful. Detroit's beat up to hell on that defensive line and at the linebacker spot. Feed Josh Jacobs. And Jacobs had 66 yards and 3 touchdowns in this one, but he only 18 carries. I would have liked to see more. Now, Green Bay didn't have a ton of offensive plays in this one, but early on, they did not try to establish the run. They tried to establish the pass first, and it took until the 4th drive for LaFleur to realize, like, oh, we have Josh Jacobs, who's been one of the best running backs in the NFL this year. Like, oh, we'll feed Josh Jacobs. And on that 4th drive for Green Bay, when they were already down 10-0, 11 plays, 10 runs, 1 pass, and the pass should have been a touchdown to Tucker Kraft on an RPO, but they end up punching in with Josh Jacobs. 11 plays, 10 runs for the touchdown. But again, it took until the 4th drive. The 4th drive for them to go back to what's worked all season, running the ball to set up the pass. They tried doing it in reverse in this one. I don't get it. In big games and big spots, and this was both of those things for the Packers, they seem to revert back to let's just try to fling. And I love Jordan Love. I love the passing game. Matt LaFleur has been a maestro calling plays for the Green Bay Packers. I am so happy he's the head coach of the Green Bay Packers. But in a lot of these big games, I don't get why they seem to forget or just abandon the run game. You didn't have to do it in this one. And again, you were only down 10-0 in the second quarter before you scored on that 4th drive, but the first 3 drives were burned out because there was no pass protection, but Green Bay kept trying to make a point to pass, and I don't get it. And then they come out in the second half, and it's a beautiful deep ball to Christian Watson. You're down 17-7, and it was the passing game that got them into the end zone on that drive, but I just thought the offense figured it out, but it shouldn't have taken as long as it did. It should not have taken as long as it did. Those first 3 drives, they're nothing. They're gone. They're burnt. Punt, fumble on the first 3 drives for Green Bay. And then they finally established the run, 11 plays, 70 yards, 10 of them run plays, 7:26 off the clock, and it's 10-7. I don't know. I'm not trying to – it probably sounds like I'm speaking like someone who believes all is lost. I don't think that with Green Bay. Like, they're 9-4. If they were in the NFC South, they'd be comfortably leading the division. If they were in the NFC West, they'd be 2 games up on Seattle. Like, it's not over for Green Bay, but this one just sucks because I expect Detroit to be there at the end in the NFC Championship. And if that's the matchup for Green Bay, hell, you might have to go their divisional round weekend depending on how things shake out. You got to get to the playoffs first. I understand that. But unless something catastrophic happens, Green Bay is definitely a playoff team. But if you couldn't beat this version of Detroit, it's not going to be easier in the NFC Championship. And it's still possible because of some of the things we saw tonight. When Green Bay did run the ball with Josh Jacobs and went back to the bread and butter, in large part, it worked. The run defense has been stellar 3 weeks in a row against 3 really, really good running teams. Miami, San Francisco, and Detroit. The run defense has been phenomenal for the Packers. I think part of it, can't say it in this game because Detroit had way more injuries than the Packers, but you're going to need Jair back, and you're going to have to cross your fingers he can stay healthy because that pass defense, that secondary, like, I'm going to bite my lip and not say some things that are really on my mind with how I view that secondary, primarily the cornerback spot without Jair. And again, I know Detroit's offense is top tier. It's cream of the crop, but that was pathetic at times. I mean, it was pitch and catch for Goff. Goff finished the game, if I'm not mistaken, with 14 straight completions. Like, I mean, you're not getting you can't enforce an incompletion. You're not getting pressure on the guy. He goes 32 of 41, hangs 283 on you in 3 touchdowns. 2 to Tim Patrick. Again, I know Green Bay, Evan Williams down early, Jair didn't play, Ballantyne was out, Bullard goes down late in the second half. Guys got to step up. They did for Detroit. Look at that pass rush for Detroit in the first half against the Packers that had Green Bay running circles trying to find a solution, and they really didn't in the first half offensively. I think Love was like 3 of 7 at halftime. The one good drive was the 11-play, 10-run drive for the touchdown, but Detroit had injuries. Guys stepped up. Packers had injuries, and at the main one I'm looking at corner, guys did not step up. Keyshawn had a nice interception. I'll have to go back and watch, but I didn't think Stokes played well at all. Carrington, Valentine underwhelmed. Again, in the middle of the field, you primarily would circle the linebacker spot. I can't get that out of my head. It was like you knew it was coming, and they just couldn't stop it. It was play action. It was under center, and Goff just pitch and catch. Like it was 7-on-7, right in the middle of the field every time. Just backbreaker after backbreaker, and I think I'm bouncing around a lot. I know it's the instant reaction video. My real concern is the defense, and maybe it's just because they played Detroit, because they made third down stops. I need to look at third down conversions, but I just had Detroit was 7 for 15 on third down. Green Bay 1 for 5. One thing I did like, Green Bay was 4 for 5 in the red zone. 4 touchdowns and a field goal. Would have been 5 touchdowns. Well, the offensive pass interference helped Jacobs get into the end zone, but could have been 5 touchdowns on 5 red zone drives, and the red zone offense had struggled mightily this year. It's picked it up the last couple of weeks for the Packers, so I thought that was good, but the inability to completely stall out drives, and I know Detroit's a different breed, but that worries me going forward because you could play them again. You could have to play Philly again. And we all remember week 1, you got a couple of early turnovers. You stalled out red zone offense, but then Philadelphia started putting up points like crazy. You're not going to be playing, you're not going to be playing the Raiders and the Panthers and the Titans. You look at Green Bay's schedule early in the year when the defense looks stellar. You're not going to play the Titans and the Colts in the playoffs. It's going to be Detroit. It's going to be Philly. It's going to be, a Tampa Bay team potentially that, has its own struggles, but offensively when healthy, that's a well-oiled machine. So that's what worries me. Playoffs, it's not going to get easier, and that secondary got carved up by Detroit in a major, major way. Very, very disappointing way. Mistakes, inability to get pressure on Goff. It's a lot of the stuff we've seen when Green Bay has lost games this year. The penalties weren't a complete killer for the Packers, but the personal foul on Quay Walker, you just can't have it. The offensive pass interference on Christian Watson, now it's 2nd and goal to 17 late, down 3, 31-28. You just can't have it. The fumble. And Watson had a great game, but the fumble, you just can't have it. He's like trying to go airborne, and he's holding the ball literally up here. You just can't do it. You can't have it. And Goff gave you a cookie. He gave you one back, but just not enough in this one. Detroit had, Jesus, I'm looking at numbers. Detroit had 18 passing first downs. My Lord. I'd be willing to venture that at least 14, 15 of them were right across the middle of the field. Both teams red zone, 4 for 5. Detroit pretty much dominated time of possession, 36 minutes to 23. Yeah, just, turnovers canceled out. It was 1-1. Penalties, both teams had 7. I think Green Bay's penalties just came at more killer times. That holding could have really bit Detroit in the ass. They were back at like the 40. 1st and 20. Run it on first down. Montgomery gets 3, and then as predictable as can be, Amon-Ra St. Brown, middle of the field, 17 yards. Pitch and catch. I will say the one time I didn't think Detroit was going to go for it was that last 4th down. I thought that one was absolutely psychotic. 4th and inches, and I know it's inches. Goff tripped on the snap, but got the handoff to Montgomery. Great play by him to do so. I thought they were going to try to get Green Bay to jump, take the timeout, kick the field goal, and you're up 3 with 40 seconds left. Green Bay has no timeouts. If there was one, I knew they were going for it on their own 31 4th and 1. Like, I knew, I was like, they're not trying to get him to jump. They're going to go for it. And those 2 fourth down touchdowns on 4th and goal, you knew they were going to go for both of them. The 4th and inches at the end of the game, I genuinely thought that they were going to try to draw Green Bay off sides, take a timeout themselves, and then kick the field goal. So you give them credit. There's just so many one-play scenarios where you're like, if Green Bay could have just stopped them on one more of those other 4th down conversions, does Green Bay win the game? They lost on a walk-off field goal. 2 of those 4th down conversions were 4th and goal touchdowns. Another was 4th and inches at the end of the game that melted off the rest of the clock. It just, against any other team in the NFL, it's probably good enough because other teams are probably kicking the field goals or are probably punting the ball. Detroit does not. They had that other 4th and 1 where it was a quarterback sneak around midfield. I think they were a little bit still in their own territory. Again, Green Bay made plays defensively that would be enough. It would be sufficient. Not against the Lions. And if you want to go to New Orleans and you still have dreams of that, you're probably going to have to go through this team again at some point, whether it's the divisional round or the conference championship. And that's why I'm deflated about this one, because if I sound like a broken record, this was the Detroit team they needed to beat, given the injuries. I don't give a rip that it was on the road. This was the Detroit version that they needed to beat to give themselves that mental confidence, like, hey, we can beat these guys. Now you roll around in January, if you have to go to Detroit again, you know Green Bay's going to be thinking it. It's natural. It's human nature. They're going to be thinking, we lost to these guys a few weeks ago. Sure, we can clean some things up, but so could they. But we lost to this team a few weeks ago when they were pulling guys off the street, off practice squads. Quan Alexander, Jamal Adams, both of whom played in this game. Now those guys are more familiar with the system. Some guys are going to be back. They have a lot of guys on season-ending injured reserve, but there's guys that are coming back for sure on that defensive side of the ball for the Lions. It just, this one sucks. This one sucks. Yeah, I don't know. I know I bounced around a lot there. I think the not getting off to a quick start. Won the coin toss, deferred. I have no problem with that. I don't, but I have a problem with Detroit going right down the field. 11 plays, 70 yards in 5 minutes. Just no resistance by Green Bay. 6-yard pass to Amon-Ra, 4-yard pass to Amon-Ra, 13-yard run for Montgomery, 7-yard pass to Gibbs, 28-yard pass to Jamison Williams, 7-yard pass to Gibbs, 6-yard pass to Laporta, boom, David Montgomery, 2-yard touchdown run. I mean, yes, crazy. Third and goal to 7. Opening drive, passes incomplete. Nope, illegal contact on Keyshawn Nixon. Automatic first down. Penalties coming at a killer time. 3rd and goal, you get a stop. 7-yard line, they aren't going for that. They're not that. 4th and goal to 7, they're kicking the field goal. You get the stop. Nope, illegal contact. Oh, automatic first down. Very next play, Montgomery waltzes into the end zone untouched. Every team gets penalized. Seems like Green Bay's have come at very, 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 very bad times. Too many times this year. Get a little extra rest. Who's up next? Seattle, right? There's still 2 more primetime games in a row. At Seattle, Sunday night, and obviously not this Sunday, and then Monday night you host New Orleans. At worst, you split, right? Seattle's not going to be an easy place to go to. New Orleans, if you lose at home to the Saints on Monday night, I mean, I might be talking about some dark doomsday scenarios there for the Packers. This one just sucks. You're 1-3 in the division. Lost to Minnesota and Detroit at home, lost at Detroit. You want honesty time? We're bouncing around. Green Bay should be 0-4 in the division. Think about that. NFC North, which has long run through Green Bay. Detroit has taken that crown over. But Green Bay should be 0-4 in the division, if not for a blocked field goal at the end against Chicago and escaping 2019. And you look at those other games in the division, because you could say, oh, yeah, Green Bay probably should have lost against Chicago, but should they have lost all the other ones? Well, Detroit 24-14 at Lambeau a month ago. felt more like a 38-14 game. Minnesota, 31-29 was the final score, but 28-0 at one point. Like, yeah, it was 28-0 with 5 minutes left in the first half. Like, Green Bay should be 0-4 in the division, but I'm choosing to zoom out the microscope to end the video. We're not going to end on a negative. They're 9-4, 4 games left. 2 are in the division. Should be a playoff team unless something absolutely catastrophic happens. This one's just going to sting for a little bit. And it's probably going to linger with them because now you have a longer time period between games, but for them maybe it's good because you get to rest up. Hopefully, I'm doing this video right after the game, so I know Evan Williams was concussion protocol. I don't know what Bullard's injury was. Van Ness, did he come back in after the thumb injury? I'm almost positive I remember seeing him out there. Sean Ryan came back after his injury. Yeah, a few extra days to rest up before hitting the road to Seattle. This one sucks, though, man. It sucks. And it sucks in the nature that it happened. Couldn't stop a nosebleed in the secondary with that Detroit passing game. And penalties at inopportune times. Offensive pass interference on a touchdown. 3rd and goal opening drive, you get a stop. Nope, illegal contact, Detroit touchdown. Quay Walker personal foul in the second half. Just a killer, man. Those are killer penalties. We'll see, though. 34-31, final score. Mitch, I'm on YouTube. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Packers are going to be all right. That's what I'm going to tell myself. Packers are going to be all right. A few extra days off next Sunday night at Seattle. Buckle up. Please subscribe to the channel. Always appreciate all the support. We'll see you next time.